This is a video not about card counting itself, but it's a simulation on what you could expect when you have a high true count. So you need to first, before this video will make sense to you, 99% of the people watching this video will not understand the video. Not saying that it wouldn't be valuable, because it might turn you into a card counter in the near future, or it may give you a reason to look into card counting. You need to first know what basic strategy is with blackjack. You need to know the indexes or the deviations, the insurance bets, the different types of tables, how to card count, the different card counting methods. This pertains obviously to a balanced high-low counting method. You need to understand all of that before this will make a great deal of sense, especially the indexes. But what I have here is 5 of each card, 5 tens too, 5 sets of tens, which is 65 cards. We're going to do a true count of plus 13. So I took out 3 4s, 3 5s, 3 6s, and then 2 2s and 3s, which is 13 cards that are being removed. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So I still have a total of 52 cards, which is exactly 1 deck's worth of cards, with 13 more ace and 10 value cards than I have low cards, which is a true count of exactly 13. And so this method will work whether you're playing a double deck game with 1 deck left in the shoe, or a 6-deck game with 85% penetration with 1 deck left in the shoe, or an 8-deck game, for example, with not so great penetration and 2 decks left in the shoe, and a running count of 26, which would be a true count of 13. This simulation will work for any of those tables. Obviously this would be a little bit different. It would be the same concept for a single deck game of blackjack, just on a much smaller scale. A true count of 13 might only have that many cards remaining instead of twice as many cards remaining, which is very, very unlikely. It's rare. Even on a 6 or an 8-deck shoe, it's very rare to get a count this high. This might only be one out of every 1,000 hands of blackjack are this high, 1 out of every 100 shoes that you play at. And if you play 5 or 10 minutes per shoe, maybe 20 minutes if you play the whole shoe without wonging in or wonging out of different tables, it could take a couple of weeks or months. I mean, you might get a lot of 6, 7, 8 true count hands, but to get something that's this high at a 13, you can make thousands of dollars in one sitting on average when the count is this high. And so usually we only see it, I only see it once or twice a month, and I go to the casino about twice a week. I spend about 2 to 3 hours at the casino per trip, and go several times per week. So this is a very unusually high count that we're going off of here, and it's again a high-low count that I'm using. And so we're going to simulate a couple of hands. This is just some of my winnings to give you, to give you an idea here. This is 13, I think, or 14,000, and these are real blackjack chips. Actually, these are $100 chips. I usually don't cash out my chips every time I go. I hang on to a few. That way, when I go back, I already have $1,000 or two ready to go. So let's say that I start with 500. Let's say 400, and let's say these are 50s each. So I can buy insurance, which obviously you would want to buy insurance when the count is this high. We're going to do full index play. So I'm going to stand on 15s and 16s. I'm going to double 9s against 2s and 7s. I'm going to double soft 19s against 4, 5s, and 6s, because that's what you're supposed to do when the count is this high. Even though basic strategy doesn't say it, if you know your indexes and your deviations, you're supposed to do it. We're going to do very conservative rules. Let's assume that the house hits on a soft 17 and that there's no surrender, which is just about the worst rules, other than reduced blackjack payouts. That's just about the worst rules you can find. So we're trying to be on the conservative side here. So let's get dealing. I'm going to deal face up. Top card of the dealers is their top card. It's the card that shows. This will just make it go a little bit quicker. So they show an 8. We have a soft 17. We stand, or I'm sorry, soft 18, ace 7. We stand against an 8. It ends up being a push. So our bet remains the same. 19 against a 20. We lost. We're obviously going to stand. So this chip will go to the dealer. We'll throw out another one. If you play with a true count of 13, you would in theory have an advantage of around 6%, 6.5%. house starts with about a half a point edge. So you'd have around a 6% edge, 6 to 7% with a count this high. Now your edge is actually a little higher than that if you play with the indexes, where you're standing on those 15s and 16s. You're doubling 9s and even 8s on the right occasions, and then you're obviously taking those very important insurance bets, and some splits and some other small things vary. But you can get an advantage as high as 10%. I'd say around 8-9% is kind of where it peaks out. So for every 10 hands you play, say I can get about 10 hands or so before I need to shuffle 10-15 hands, say 6 cards a hand. We should see about 1 hand of profit per cycle. So this is only a $100 bet. Obviously, if we were at the casino with this unbelievably high of a count, we'd probably want to be betting $500 or $1,000 or whatever, the highest amount that you're comfortable with. I would personally bet $2,000 or $3,000 because I have stacks of cash and I know how important this is and how valuable this is. I've played quite a while. I've been a professional. So let's keep dealing. 17, we actually lost again. This is ironic. So we have a 7 against a dealer's 5. That's even. That's not a double down, but we're going to hit it. We got a 10, 19. Dealer's going to hit 17. We won one, finally. It's about time. Dealer shows an 8. We have a 14. We're going to hit it. We hit a 20. Lucky us. They hit a 21. Unbelievable. This dealer's been getting very, very lucky, but I'm confident we'll make it back. Maybe not on this hand. They got a blackjack. The reason that counting is effective is because blackjacks pay the dealer 1-to-1, where they pay the player 1.5-to-1. They pay a 3-to-2. So we have a 19 against a 12. We're going to stand. They're going to bust. What a surprise that they busted on a 12. Usually they don't bust on a 12. They have a very low chance, a relatively low chance of busting on a 12. But now they have a much higher chance because of the surplus of 10s. That's the second reason that card counting works. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Dealer hands bust more frequently. Players will hit their double downs much more frequently, and the players will get blackjacks much more frequently, as well as the dealer. But again, the blackjacks pay the player at a higher rate than they pay the dealer. So we won this hand. So we are going to pay, we're going to refund the bet and pay me 1. We're going to put one more bet on the line. 20. We won another bet. We'll leave that there and we'll add one to the chip stack. 12 against a 10. The 10 showing, not the 6. So we're going to have to hit a 12 against a 10, which we got a 19. Dealer flips a 16, 18. We actually won that. There we are. Now we're actually up $100. Even though we started with a very, very bad start, dealer won the first 3 in a row or so. They drew to a 21. We were getting 17s and 18s against 19s and 20s. We won again. The math proves right. Now we're up 2 hands. Even though we started at a 3-hand disadvantage, we ended up for the positive. So let's do this again. Let's simulate another 10 or 15 hands. Because if math serves us right, every shuffle that I do, we should be up about 1 hand on average. If we have a 7 to 10% advantage, and we're playing, say, 10 to 16 hands per time that I shuffle this example, we should be up about 1 bet per shuffle. On this one, we happen to be up a little bit more. We were up about 2 bets. But let's do it again. We won. They're obviously going to stand on an 18. $17 stands. They hit 18. They actually won that. That's surprising. It's a push. They show an 8. We have a soft 15, which we hit to a hard 15. We're actually going to have to hit that again. It's right on the borderline of hitting versus standing on against an 8 with this hand. But we hit it, and we busted. The index for a 15 against an 8, I believe, is right around 10. It's about a 50-50 either way in that scenario. We have a 9 against a 7, which is usually not a double down, but it's a double down on this high of a true count. We hit a 19, and that's why. We just made, if you're betting, say, $1,000 a hand, we just made $2,000 in profit. Now, again, we're already up an additional $100, even though they got lucky on that first draw. 19 against an 18, we win another $1,000 or so dollars. 17 stands against a 15. They are going to hit a 16 and bust. We get paid again. Let's do a couple more. This will be over shortly. 20 against an 18. Now we're just getting lucky. There's really no skill in this. Whether I get the 18 or they get the 18, it's the same. It's hands like this that matter. When I have a 12 and they have a 5, showing it's the top card is a 5. I have a 12, they have a 5. If I stand, which is what I'm going to do, they only have about a 41% chance to bust. But now they have closer to a 50% chance to bust just because of how many 10 cards are remaining in the deck. So instead of being a losing hand, this is about a 50-50 on this $1,000. They hit a 16. Now they're going to bust about 70% of the time. And they did. So I won an extra $1,000. Where if this additional 9 wasn't in here and this was a 2 or a 3 or a 4 or even a 5, we would have lost that. Or even an ace, we would have lost that. So we won another one. That is the last. We can do one more here. Soft 4 against a 3. We're going to double this down. You usually wouldn't double this down, but again, when you're counting cards, you actually can. So we hit a hard 15 against the dealer's 9. See, they had a good card underneath it we didn't know about. They hit a 20, so we lost $4,000 on that one. So even though we lost that big $4,000 hand, again, we have $8,000. We're up another $3,000 in that hand. So we won a couple $1,000, about $2,000, even though we started out bad on the first scenario. We won about $3,000, even though we started out bad on the second scenario. Let's do one very final scenario here. Because those are a little higher than expected returns. We expect about $1,000 or so, or one bet per 10 to 15 that we do is average. So if you simulate this 100 times at home, 100 different hands, you should be up about 5 to 10 bets on average. And say you do that once a day for a week. If you do it for 7 days, 100 hands per day, it'll take you like 10-15 minutes a day. You have to do the right indexes, the right insurance bets, the right everything. If you do that, you'll see consistently, on average, you'll be up 5 to 10 bets every time that you do that. It's not that you're up 1 out of every 100 bets, or 1 out of every 200 bets, which would be a 1 or a 2%. It's a substantial return. We're starting with 500 again. We have a 9 showing, so we're hitting. We have a 12, so I'm going to hit it again. 15, now we're going to stand. That's deviation. You wouldn't hit a 15 against a 9 at this high of a count. They bust. That's why you don't hit it. So we're going to get our bet plus 1. So we're going to leave the bet out there. We're obviously going to stand against an 8. Wow, they got lucky. They hit a 20. It's a push. Ooh, 11 against a 5. Best double down in the world. Ooh, worst possible card in the world. We hit a 12. They have a 15, but of course they're going to bust because we're counting cards. So each one's $2,000. They may not have busted right there if we weren't counting cards. They have an 8 showing. We're going to split on up the aces. 1 card an ace. How often do you see that when you split aces? How often do you see a 21 and a 20? Usually you'll get a 2 and a 3, or a 4 and a 5, or 2 5s, or you'll end up with 2 crappy hands. Oftentimes, if you've ever been to the casino and played before. But in this case, we got a 20 and a 21 because we knew that there were 10s coming. The chances of a 10 is substantially higher than before. It's about 30% higher chance of getting a 10. And again, the dealer has an 18, so we actually got paid out on both of those. We won $2,000. Let's do 1 or 2 very final hands here, and that will conclude this for the day. 7s against a 2, that's an easy split. Stand, stand. Dealer has a 2. They hit an 18. They got just as lucky as we did before with that 6. Again, that's the chance that this was going to be a 6 and they were going to make their hand was much lower than regular. Chances of this being a 10 and their hand busting and us winning an additional 2,000 was much higher because of the remaining 10s. But they actually, fortunately, got it this time. So that kind of evens things out. They won their 2,000 back. A soft 5 against a 10, we're going to hit. Hard 16 against a 10, we're going to stand. They're going to hit a 20. How lucky. So they won $100. And then we have, I believe, 1 or 2 final hands here. 20 against an 8, we'll stand. we get paid. And this should be the last one here. 20 against a 10, we get paid 1. Actually, we got one last one here. I think we have about 6 cards. 16 against a 10 will stand, and we'll actually end up losing that one. So this time, we're, again, up 3 bets. So we actually won 9 bets over the course of 30 or 40 hands, which is actually higher than normal. That's about $4,500 if you're playing $500 hands, or $9,000 if you're playing $1,000 hands, which is higher than the expected return. But if I were to continue simulating this 100 more times, it should average out at about 10 bets to the positive for every 100 hands played. Where again, if you're playing $500 hands, that's $50 per hand that you play in expected profit, or $100 a hand that you play if you're betting 1,000, or if you're betting 3 spots of $500 per spot, like that, that's $1,500 for example. Your expected return is $150 per hand that you play. And so if you can get, say, 5 hands at a true count this high, you just made $750 in the matter of 5 minutes. Whether you win or lose, you might win 5 grand, you might lose 5 grand, but in the grand scheme of things, the math works out. It's been published on many different websites that that's what you'll win, and that's exactly what I've seen. I've been doing this for quite a while. I don't ever usually bet more than $500 a hand, because that's what the limits are out here where I play, unless I go to Vegas. It's not like I won all this money in 1 or 2 hands. This has been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of big hands, and many tens or hundreds of thousands of regular hands to get to that point. So I wish you all good luck. Learn your indexes, learn your strategy, and that's how it can work if it's executed properly.